Alright, stop whatever you are doing right now, because what just dropped this morning is the kind of news that genuinely changes everything. The Chicago Bears, one of the most storied franchises in NFL history, a team that has called Illinois home for over a century, may be packing their bags and crossing state lines into Indiana. And this is not a rumor. This is not a leak. This came straight from the top. If this story has your blood pumping the way it has mine, do me a quick favor, hit that like button, share this video with every Bears fan you know, and subscribe so you never miss a major update like this one. Now let me ask you something before we dive deep. Did you ever actually think it would come to this? Did you genuinely believe that the state of Illinois would let this happen? Because here we are. The Chicago Bears Board of Directors held a meeting, voted, and formally moved to advance their stadium development project in Hammond, Indiana. That is not a rumor. That is not a trial balloon floated by some unnamed source. That is an official organizational decision made at the highest level of the franchise. In a joint statement, Team Chairman George McCaskey and CEO Kevin Warren declared that this stadium project in Hammond would, in their words, transform the entire region, connecting northwest Indiana to the south side of Chicago, running through the loop, stretching across neighborhoods and suburbs all the way north of the city. They called it a world-class development. They said it would bring Chicagoland together and create real opportunities for residents and businesses across the area. Now let that sink in for a second. The Chicago Bears just issued an official organizational statement describing a future that does not exist inside the state of Illinois. That is extraordinary. You do not put your board of directors in a room, hold a formal vote, pass it, and then release a public statement like that just to rattle a few cages. Organizations at this level do not gamble their credibility on empty theatrics, especially not when billions of dollars and the identity of an entire franchise are on the line. But here is where it gets layered, because nothing with this stadium saga has ever been simple. The statement itself contains an important detail that deserves attention. They said the exact site in Hammond is still to be selected. So while the direction is clear, the shovels are not going into the ground next week. There is still process ahead. And that small window, that gap between the vote and the final commitment, leaves just enough space to ask the question, is there still a sliver of leverage being played here? Here is how I read it. The Bears are genuinely prepared to go to Indiana. That part feels real. But within this announcement, there might still be the faintest signal to Springfield, a last warning shot that says, if Illinois can call an emergency summer legislative session and actually get something done in the next several weeks, the door is not completely welded shut yet. It is cracked open. Maybe 5% open. Maybe less. But it is not zero. And that matters, because the core issue here is that the Illinois House of Representatives adjourned their legislative session without ever bringing the Bears stadium bill to a vote. The legislation that would have given the franchise the property tax certainty they needed, the financial foundation required to commit to $1 billion stadium project inside the state, simply died. The House walked away. Their next scheduled session does not resume until November. The Bears are not waiting until November. Nobody serious is waiting until November after a vote like this one. Here is your question of the day, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Drop your answer in the comments right now. Is this Indiana move a done deal, or do you believe Illinois still has a real shot to pull this back? Say yes if you think the Bears are Indiana bound for good. Say no if you think this is still leverage and a deal gets done in Illinois. Reporter Courtney Cronin, who covers this team closely, published reporting shortly after the announcement that adds important texture. A league source told her that while the Hammond announcement is, quote, real, meaning it is not simply a leverage play, the Bears leaving the state is still not considered a completely done deal at the league level. Indiana is currently in the lead, the source said, but Illinois can still get back in the race. The catch. The state has an enormous amount of ground to recover after failing to pass the legislation that the Bears had been waiting on. So even from inside the league, people are watching Illinois to see if it blinks. A special summer session would be the move. An emergency call to action from the governor's office, from legislative leadership, from someone in Springfield who actually understands what is at stake, that would be the answer. But based on everything we have seen from Illinois politicians throughout this entire process, do not hold your breath. And look, it is fair to point out that this has not been a flawless operation on the Bears' side either. Kevin Warren came into this role with legitimate credentials. He helped navigate a stadium project in Minnesota. He understood the complexity of these deals. But the strategy throughout this process has been scattered. First, it was Arlington Heights, where the team had already purchased the old racetrack property. Then suddenly the focus shifted to the lakefront. Then other Illinois counties entered the conversation. Then Indiana. It has felt at times like the franchise was negotiating with itself before it ever sat down seriously with anyone else. When you buy a property, you go all in on that property. You do not spend years exploring every other option while your anchor asset sits there waiting. And George McCaskey handed the keys to Kevin Warren with a mandate to make this work, by whatever path necessary. So while Warren has taken criticism, the direction came from ownership. These are organizational decisions, not the failures of one person alone. But here we are. 3 years deep into a process that should have been cleaner. And now we have an official board vote pointing toward Indiana. Here is what I want you to understand about what a Hammond Stadium would actually mean in practical terms. Hammond is geographically closer to downtown Chicago than Arlington Heights is. If the Bears build a genuinely elite, world-class stadium, the kind of venue that becomes a destination in itself, fans will show up. They will make the drive. They will take the train. The stadium experience will carry it. And before anyone reaches for the outrage, remember that the New York Giants and the New York Jets have played in New Jersey for decades. The name on the jersey does not always match the state on the address. Fans adapt when the product is worth following. But that does not mean this sits right. The Chicago Bears have been an Illinois institution for more than 100 years. The idea that a failure of political will, a complete breakdown of legislative follow-through, could be what finally pushes this franchise across the border is genuinely painful. It is frustrating in a way that goes beyond sports. It speaks to a deeper dysfunction in how that state handles major decisions that carry real economic weight and real cultural significance. So where does this all land right now? The Bears have made their clearest move yet. The board has voted. The statement is public. Indiana is the frontrunner. Illinois is on the clock in a way it has never been before, and the clock is not set to November. It is set to whenever that final Hammond site gets selected and commitments start becoming irreversible. The window is still open. But it is closing fast. And if Illinois lets it shut, if the politicians who had every opportunity to act simply watch this franchise walk away, that is a failure that will echo for a very long time. What do you think happens next? Is there anyone left in Springfield with the urgency and the ability to actually change this outcome? Leave your thoughts below. This conversation is just getting started.